Hi, I'm Randy Hollenbeck, and this is the Music Roundtable. Today on the show, we have Jonathan and Darin from hard rock band Guides.
What's going on, everyone?
How you doing?
Hold your breath.
I just wanted to start out by digging into some of your history. Darin, can you tell me, like, what age did you start playing guitar, and what got you into playing guitar? What was there like a band, or what inspired you?
Oh yeah, so I started playing around age 12. It was like sixth grade, and at that point in time, I was just like really interested in like understanding how to create that distortion sound that you heard on like Nirvana. You know, Nirvana was a big influence at that time, and Green Day and Bush. You know, all those bands, Smashing Pumpkins, which was my first concert. I went to see Smashing Pumpkins play Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness tour at the Civic Arena, and that just like changed, my life completely. About like I want to be up there like Billy Corgan playing these weird sounds, and so I started taking lessons, and from there I started on a nylon string guitar, but then years later, progressed up to an electric. So it just took many years. Ninth grade is when I started to get more serious about it, but that's where it all began.
Okay. Jonathan, can you tell me what age did you like start getting into music and start singing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to give my sister Rachel a lot of credit for my music influences because she started me young. I remember being in kindergarten listening to Pearl Jam's 10. I think that was like the first thing I heard that was like, whoa, this is like powerful, right? Like you can convey a lot of emotions and stuff through music. So later on, it was Bush was like my first favorite band, like when I was a little bit older, and then when I discovered Taproot when I was like 12 or 13 years old, that kind of like changed everything for me. Where I was like, okay, like I want to be up there on stage, like jumping around and like with that kind of energy and screaming into a microphone. So that's kind of where it all started for me. And honestly, that's kind of how I started singing too. It was like going to shows as a teenager, singing along, and then kind of just like in my bedroom or like in front of like the bathroom mirror, like singing along to whatever my favorite CD was at the time. But then when I got into like junior high and chorus was an option, I joined the chorus in school and started to learn more like proper techniques and things like that. So I don't, I'm not formally trained by any means, but like it's all been kind of learning as I go, playing in bands. I was in my first band when I was 13, so I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and it's crazy to say, but it's true.
What are some of your musical influences, Darin, as far as guitar players? Who influenced you?
I think going back to the earlier days, it was Wes Borland from Limp Bizkit was very influential because of his unique style of tuning his guitars and how he had that four-string guitar to play that. It was almost like playing the bass on guitar, and I was like, man, I was like, that's very interesting. So back in that era when I was starting in serious, Wes Borland, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, my biggest like interest at that point was like, how do you get that wow, wow, wow? Like they're doing the turntable. So I mean, I actually bought a guitar when I was in 7th grade. I had, my mom, she helped me upgrade my guitar, and it was like I wanted to buy a guitar with the toggle switch so I could do his crazy stuff that he did in Bulls on Parade. So that was another. And then as I kind of progressed, it was more getting into bands like Incubus and stuff like that, where it was like, oh, this guy's making these weird like chords, and then bands like Papa Roach. There's an early song that I wrote that like was very similar to like a Papa Roach song. So a lot of those bands that came out in that era, I guess I just gotta say, like, I mean, Incubus, Wes Borland, Limp Bizkit, and Rage Against the Machine were like very influential in why I continued. And like I said, Smashing Pumpkins and Bush were also influences at that time as well.
Gotta love Gavin Rossdale.
Is that one of your influences, Jonathan?
Oh yeah, yeah. He's just like he's so cool. Like, and he still is. Like, you go see a Bush concert, like, I don't know, he's probably 50 at this point, but he jumps around like he's 25 and performs, with the same energy that that he probably always did. And he goes out in the crowd and jumps around with the fans, and it's just like, he just kind of like, he's just cool.
Well, I think the thing that so I saw Bush on the Razor Blade Suitcase tour back. This was like I think I was in 7th grade. That was like the first concert that my parent, like, they sat in the parents section. They couldn't go into the concert, but they let me and my friends go in to the Civic Arena and see Bush, play.
Just Limp Bizkit for me.
So, but then years later, this had to be like, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, but we went to see them. This was when they came back and they played at Stage AE. And we saw Bush like for the first time, and I don't know how many
That was
years.
my first time seeing them. I never got to see the original lineup. That was like my biggest disappointment when they broke up, is I never got to see Bush. So I was pumped when they came back, but
it was like different members. Like, I mean, they had the same drummer and Gavin was in, but it was different guitar player and bass player. But so anyway, we were like sitting after the show. We went out. We were like, oh, let's go about back and see if like the band members, if they're. So we ran into the new guitar player. We were talking to him, or no, the bass player. And then all of a sudden, like out of the blue, like I look out of my corner eye, and I was like, it's Gavin Rossdale. Like, just
he just like approaches us slowly, like out of the darkness, like a vampire or something.
And I'm thinking, I'm like, this is the guy that like I had his Rolling Stone magazine on my shelf. Like, I idolized this guy. Like, wanted to grow long hair like him.
Yeah, blonde, like wavy.
Yeah, right. And like I didn't have waves in my hair. Like, it is kind of curly, but I was like, I wanted his haircut, so I was like kind of like, and then this guy just like walks out, and just like, hey, I'm Gavin Rossdale, blah, blah, blah. So it was like kind of like a starstruck moment for the both of us when we got to meet him. And then the funny thing was, like, I wanted to take a picture to, remember that. And he goes, no flashes. You can't use a flash on Gavin Rossdale. So we noticed.
Yeah, they're like not too close.
Yeah, not too close. But
no, but he was like, I mean, he's weird, but he's cool.
Yeah.
Like, he's an interesting conversation. We talked, like, we were both in Identity X at the time, and we pitched the band to him. Not like I guess we gave him a card or something, and like pitch it. We just gave him like the information, and it's like, are you guys one of those down-tuned bands? Because like they wrote all their stuff in standard tuning, like the original records. Ironically enough, now they are one of those down-tuned bands. Like, they're writing their heavier songs, and it's all in alternate tunings and stuff. So he was like critical of it, in 2011 or whatever, but then he kind of realized that they needed to and he's admitted that they needed to like adapt to what these heavier bands that are playing the festivals with them. So it's kind of funny.
How did the band form?
Ooh. Well, long story, but I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. So as I mentioned, I was a member of Identity X for probably like 3 or 4 years. I played keyboard and did background vocals, and at the we kind of got to a point where we were kind of spending more time doing, I guess, cover music in between original shows. And so a few of us that were other members in Identity X, the guitar player at the time and the drummer at the time, we just decided that we wanted to do more original music. Like, we wanted to write our own songs and be out playing them. So we broke off from Identity X, and this was like 2014, I think. So we're talking almost 10 years ago. So that was when Guides originally formed. We spent about, I don't know, 6 or 8 months writing a batch of songs, which, I'm sure we'll get to. That's actually the same songs that we're putting out now and playing. So that's kind of the start of that story too. But we wrote a batch of songs. We got ourselves ready to play. We actually played our first show with Identity X at the Hard Rock, and we did our thing for about a year, and it kind of fizzled out. Just for, I don't know, I guess the other guys kind of lost interest. We went our separate ways. But before we did that, we had started a recording process. So we were kind of tracking demos ourselves, and I had drums and bass. So when those guys left, I at least had that to work with. So I kind of took it upon myself to finish the material and work with a few other people that I had worked with in the past to finish demoing the songs. And what I thought was going to be like a 2-month process turned into 2 years of me kind of trying to, figure out how to finish the stuff. So that was kind of the process I went through. It wasn't anything that was like releasable. It was just, kind of rough demos of things. But once that was complete, we're at this point, it was like 2018. And so I was just like, all right, well, I'm kind of bored. So I decided to try to reform the band. And I reached out to, the guys that were still around from the original lineup. And the bass player, Mocha, was in. So he and I kind of got things started and started looking for other people to join us. And it took a whole year to find our drummer, Tim. So at this point, it's 2019. We had picked up another guitar player, so we were just kind of getting ourselves ready to play shows. And then everyone has this story: the pandemic hit. So now we're in 2020, but what could have, I guess, ended things or forced people to lose interest or whatever didn't happen. Like, we stuck together through the pandemic. We remained really productive. We wrote a ton of material. So like half the stuff we're playing out now is all new stuff we wrote during the pandemic. And then, we started just a recording project with like retracking the things that, we wrote, 8 years ago. So we used that time to kind of figure ourselves out and figure out our process and what we wanted to sound like and how we wanted to play the material and what kind of live band we wanted to be. And, it was kind of frustrating at the time to not be able to be out doing the things. But, with how things are going now, looking back, it was like, I'm kind of grateful that we were able to let all that stuff play out behind the scenes. And now that we're out doing things for real, it's we kind of skip that step of trying to figure things out, and it's like a on display for the public.
So, how did you find Darin?
So, well, Darin and I met like 15 years ago. It was like 2008. And you want to tell the story of how we met?
So basically, we used to work, or I started there first. There was an ad agency in Pittsburgh called Mark USA, and I was there for about, I think I was there for, it's like my second year, and I was the multimedia specialist, which is nowadays is called the content creator. So doing all the in-house video production, and a part of the member of the broadcast team. Well, that summer, they would get interns. So they said, yeah, there's this guy from Pitt. His name's Jonathan coming in. I'm like, oh man, like got this intern coming in, and whatever. So then all of a sudden, like, he comes in, we meet, and we start to talk about like all the bands that we share interest in. There's not a lot of people that were like into the heavier music, so I think
especially new metal,
right? There's a lot of people that just didn't understand. Like, I mean, we would talk about like obscure bands like Darwin's Waiting Room and Third Strike and 40 Below Summer, and they're just like, man, these are bands that, like, when we were back starting Identity X, like I would, these are bands that I remember from that early day of like, man, these are the bands that are like popular, that boom of music. So Jonathan and I, like, he's 4 years younger than me, but like he followed these bands as much as I followed them. So,
and the connection there is I said earlier, my sister was a big influence. She's 4 years older than me, so she's the same age as Darin. So like that's why we're like on the same plane of like, influences.
So then, I mean, from there, I mean, he was my intern, he worked there.
That's how we met. I was Darin's intern.
And, I made it in a way, like I try to say, like when I was an intern, I just commented on someone's post, like, man, they made me like, polish doors and like paint walls and all this Mr. Miyagi stuff. And I was like, that's not going to help an intern like grow. I mean, they did have him, my boss made him like organize
these shelf of
reels, like this stupid stuff. And I was like, that's her. Like I couldn't override her, but he kind of hung out. My space at that agency was like the hangout spot, because there was a couch. There was like, it was
the only guy that only non-executive that had his own office.
Right. And I had like posters like Requiem for a Dream and like, all these cool, like it was a cool space to come in and just hang out, as opposed to being out in the cubicle area. So, we kind of started chatting, and,
well, the other discovery though too was that we were born on the same day.
That's right. Yeah.
So 4 years apart, but we have the same birthday.
That's right. So we learned that we were born on the same day. I was like, wow, that's, very, very strange to have that occurrence happen. So, but then from there, we just we stayed in touch.
I moved to New York for a year when I was done with school. So like that, I was out of the picture for a while, but like we stayed in touch, and then I moved back. I wasn't there very long, and I went back to school when I came back to Pittsburgh, and
it's 2011, right?
Yeah,
or 2010, or 2011, or 2010, or whatever. And then he stayed in touch with me, and then I got him a job at that agency as like a full-time job. It was like, hey,
But before that, I joined the band.
Before that, you joined the band, right? Exactly. Identity X. Yeah, I brought you in. I said, we needed somebody to round out the lineup, because like I just got tired of hitting the pads. I had to play guitar and hit the sampler pad, and I was just like, I need somebody that can do this stuff but also play it live. So that's why I suggested bringing Jonathan into the picture. So we connected on that length of like, we both like music, we both like playing out. Jonathan had a lot of energy, I had a lot of energy. It was just like we needed people to like really make that element of the band work. So, we brought him in like there. And then, like I said, from there, I got him a job, and that helped support his, get him his money situation worked out. So,
we've been friends for a long time, and obviously we played in another band together. And so kind of fast forwarding to where, Darin got involved with Guides. We had essentially become a three-piece like throughout the pandemic. The guitar player we brought in originally, and it's the most cliche thing in the world, but it was creative differences. Like we just, when we got to the point of trying to write new material, we're on the same page. And so, our bass player was doing double duty, like for the writing process, was just fine. But once we wanted to start playing out, we needed to solve that problem. And, I really at that point decided, like, if I'm going to do this, like my preference is to do this with my friends. So like if I can make music and play music with one of my best friends and like share these experiences that we're having now, like that's my priority. That's my first choice. So like I I honestly didn't know if Darin would be interested or not, because there wasn't like a ongoing dialogue or anything about it. I just kind of approached him about it at one point, and he was on board and interested in doing it because he's just wants to be playing out and involved in something. So and I knew that part of it, but so it's really worked out. Like it was the missing ingredient as far as I was concerned in terms of bringing our live performance up to the level that I want it to be and what I'm used to things being. And now that Darin's getting more involved in the writing process, like, and it's to no fault, our bass player writes guitar parts that, sound like a bass player wrote them. So it's nice to have kind of Darin come in and add another dimension and layer to it that just like, it doesn't, overrule anything, but it just kind of, it takes it to another level, and that's why I like doing this with people. That's what the collaboration is all about, right? Like you can only go take something so far by yourself or with two people, and then you get someone else's ideas or influences in the mix. It turns it into something else. So that's really what's playing out, and it's in just like anything, we're still figuring our things out, but so far so good.
And I think the other thing I want to mention is like prior to joining Guides, Jonathan and I also have collaborated on a lot of short films over that span of time that we were working at that agency. And I said, I want to get off and start doing some more creative projects. So we have a track record of working well together on creative projects. We both played in the same band prior, and it was just like, why keep looking through this, random pool of people that, might not be up to the level where you want them to be. Like, I've been, like I said, I've been playing since I was 12. I've been in a band for, I don't know, since I was 15 years old, the same band, with multiple lineup changes. I understand the business of working with people. So like, I understand like when you come into this project, you got to be ready. You got to be dedicated to practicing. You got to be good. And that's the thing is there's a lot of people that they want to do it, but they just don't have the skills. So, I mean, now that I have like, I've already spent like 20 years of my life like perfecting my guitar playing. It was like, okay, you can pick up, be in the band, play out, and be record ready too. So that's the other thing too. Like, it's hard to find people that are good to go into the studio and play, and then also be able to translate that to the stage. So that's why it works in this way.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't stress enough the element of like, just like the relationship we have, right? I mean, that's like, that's what, I don't know. It just makes sense, right? Like it actually didn't make sense that we were spending so much time together, not being in a band together. So, it's just kind of the obvious answer. But creatively too, like the direction of the sound, like I think when Guide started, when we wrote like the first batch of stuff in 2014, new metal, like that kind of stuff was out. Like, and so we kind of wanted to stray a little away from that. Like I, screamed a lot less in the early that material, and like that's what I do best. So like I should be doing that. So with Darin involved, like knowing that we have all of the same influences, like it like frees me up to not be afraid to like lean more into that influence and like just be that, because like that's what we are and that's like what we're gonna do best. So I think getting other people involved that maybe don't share that same like passion for those influences, like it would be more of a struggle to go the direction that like I really want to go.
And I have all their stuff is written on a 7-string guitar. So I have 2 7-strings, 2 baritones, an 8-string guitar. I mean, I'm set up to play that style of music, and I've been studying that for many years. So it's like it just made sense, for me to come in and, take, get going with whatever they already had written. Not a lot of people play 7-string guitar.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing too.
Well, and like, for like we cover the Taproot song, like you need the baritone for that. And so, you could do it other ways. It just wouldn't sound as good. But like, it hits the way it hits because of that, that deep baritone sound.
Which the baritone that I have is the guy from Stained way back in the day. He released Mike Mushak. He released an Ibanez, which is like a very hard to find guitar, but I bought it on eBay, and it's been like my favorite guitar that I ever had because it's like I have that one, and I have the guy, the guitar player that used to play in Orgy, Amir
Dekra
or Derek. I can't remember how I pronounce his name, but I bought that guitar and then this other one. But the Mike Mushak one is like one of my favorites because it just has that like heavy sound that you want from a down tuned, as Gavin Rossdale would say, guitar.
Well, that's something when we get into writing more new stuff, I want to, be able to experiment more with the baritone guitar because that's not an opportunity I've ever gotten, and it's one I've always wanted. So excited for that.
Okay. How did you come up with the name for the band?
Huh. I don't know if there's an. So I can say this. I've been in, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 different bands in my life, and the hardest thing about them was always coming up with a name. Guides was the easiest one I ever came up with, and it was like the one that had the least resistance when I was like, I think it should be Guides, and everyone was just like, okay, cool. So I think the best way to put it, without rambling, would be that when the band formed in 2014 or whatever it was, I was kind of going through my own like spiritual process. I guess I went through like becoming more in tune with like my spiritual side. And so, when you're learning about those things, exploring those things, you the word guide or guides kind of reoccurs over and over again. You see it a lot in the vocabulary and in the literature and stuff like that. So it was just like in my face all the time. And then, it was a conversation with the other guys in the band at the time where it was just like, we want it to be something, short and simple, like, one word, if we can do that. And I think it was like one of those things where, I was thinking about it and I just like kind of woke up one morning and it was just in my head that that's what it should be. And, that was kind of it. I do, but there were like, there was a process too of like, exploring whether or not that's what I wanted to go with. And, like I said, everything kind of, I was going through that time kind of brought me back to that. But also, there is the Taproot lyric from the song Come Back, where he talks about waiting for a sign from his guides. And that was like, I think I heard this song at that time and I was like, oh yeah, like, okay, that solidifies it. Like there's like, it actually throws back to, a song from my favorite band. So, the only like hesitant like kind of thing that is, I guess, a challenge with the name is that, back then there was another band named Guides in like California. I don't think they exist anymore, but like we still kind of, there are other bands that share the name out there. So, it have to kind of compete with that or something, but, whatever. We like it. It works for what, it's what our, I guess, material was inspired by and the kind of themes and messages of the songs. So, that's, until someone would force us to change it, that's what we're going with.
Okay. What city are you based out of?
We are in Pittsburgh. This is Leto Man, by the way, named after Jared Leto, and that's our 30 Seconds to Mars influence.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to dig in a couple of your songs. Intimidation Game came out May 5th, 2023, and I just grabbed a few lines out of your song that I liked. And it says taking chances, losing all control, and trusting our instincts and leaving this all behind. Could you tell me a little bit about that and about the song?
Yeah. So the there's kind of like two things that inspired the lyrical content of that song, and the first verse is really about like the chaos of life. And I don't know whether you're talking about your like job or your family or whatever like stuff is happening to you, like just how there are certain pressures and chaos that like can be overwhelming, but like you know and like just like kind of explains like the experience of feeling that pressure kind of like blow to the top. So the chorus then in response to that is kind of saying, okay, there's kind of two choices in how we deal with that, right? It's either we panic, and that's the line, the panic inducing reactions are wearing us down, and that's like not productive, right? Or we can kind of choose to just kind of deal with this in more of like a composed, I guess peaceful way, and probably have a better outcome or have a better experience than if we just like kind of choose to buy into like the stress or chaos of what's happening around us. And then I guess to finish what I was saying about verse one, like verse two, it kind of explores that same thing, with like things being kind of like I guess stressful, for lack of a better term, but like more kind of like from a relationship perspective. So first verse is more about like your environment, your surroundings, and verse two is more about like how that can kind of play out like in a relationship.
Taking chances, losing all control. Building shelter, scared to make a move. Panic-inducing reactions are wearing us down. Trusting our instincts and leaving this all behind. It's easier.
The next song is Spirit Box. It came out June 23rd, 2023, and there's like a little piano line that runs throughout that song. I wondered if you could just tell me that. Was that like something that you built around? You started with that and you built around it, or how did that come about?
So that's a really interesting question. So the foundation of that song. So when I was in college, actually, when Darin and I met, I was in a band called Said the Head. We were based out of my hometown in Hollidaysburg, PA. But we had written a song called Spirit, and it was, I believe, in a different key, and it was like the same, like that's where the riff came from, but it sounded more like it was more metal sounding. It kind of sounded like Kill Switch Engage or something like that. So when we formed Guides and we were like kind of writing our first batch of material, I had approached my friend from that other band and asked if we could I guess adopt that idea or develop that idea to use for Guides, and he was totally cool with it. So we kind of wanted to take it and approach it more from like a 30 Seconds to Mars kind of sound, right, and give it more of like a less metal sounds, more alternative, more space, more like open kind of verses and choruses, and just kind of, I guess, simplify it from like a guitar perspective, but then build it out like with more atmosphere, more like I guess that's the right word. So that's really where the keyboards came in. So the guitar riff came first, and then I took a piece of it and kind of came up with that piano line, and there's like synths and stuff underneath that to give it more depth, and there's like some pulsing synths too to give it some I guess give it more like texture and I guess more of a rhythmic feel in those sections too. But and then we kind of put that in and then build around that even more with the like the drums and the bass and what they were going to do in the song. So yeah, so it was kind of like in the middle of the process when we decided to add the piano lines.
Are you hiding in my memories for eternity? 'Cause I swear you don't exist. I've been searching through oblivion for your signs of life, but I'm just one step behind. What about forever? I'll finish what I started and move on.
You have a CD release show. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. So September 2nd, Club Cafe. That's a Saturday night, Labor Day weekend. We're headlining that show, and that is going to be our official CD release party for the EP, which is called When Everything Reverses, and there's 5 songs on it. So we're really, the idea is we want it to be the biggest party to end the summer. So we have some really awesome killer bands playing with us, supporting the show. Our friends in Old Neon, they don't sound anything like us. They're pop punk, but they just kill it, and they're just like so high energy that like I think that's what makes it's gonna be a blended lineup, but that's what like the common ground between us and them, and then the other band who is really awesome, Short Fictions, is that we're all really high energy, and I think that so they're more of like a indie kind of like power pop band sound. So it's like they have an edge too, but it's a more of an indie sound. And then Old Neon brings the high energy with like the pop punk sound, and then we're gonna come on and do our thing. And I just feel like the lineup that we put together, all 3 bands are just like at least the best that I've heard locally at what we do. So I couldn't be more thrilled about the show as a whole. And I think that anyone that decides to come to the show is going to be highly entertained from front to back, because there's not really any there's not going to be any drop off in energy from the time that it starts till the end.
And what's your plans for the rest of this year?
That's a good question. Well, we definitely want to play more shows. We don't have anything officially on the calendar yet after the EP release, but we definitely want to be out playing and supporting the release as much as we can in Pittsburgh. I would love to get us out of town. If we can make it out to like Ohio or another neighboring state that makes sense. That's kind of a stretch goal for the rest of the year. But really, after we do this CD release, aside from supporting it where we can, I really want to prioritize us getting back into the studio to record this next batch of songs, which is, I would say, 80-85% complete and ready to go, and we're already playing a lot of these songs out. So I want to prioritize finishing that material and getting us in position that we can be doing this again next year. So we don't want to have any drop off in momentum. We want to keep things rolling. So that's probably really has to be the next thing. You were at the Taproot show. You saw what what went on with us and the whole Fred Durst and Limp Bizkit I don't know, we want a commotion. So we would so we may have some things up our sleeve as far as what we might do with next steps with Stuck and our Limp Bizkit cover. So I would say stay tuned for that.
We're also working on a lyric video for Spirit Box, so it's more of a. So if you didn't already know what I said earlier, I do all the video stuff professionally. So then I also work on the stuff the music video for Intimidation Game. I shot that. I didn't film myself, but the other guy Tim also does video. But I did a lot of the editing with Jonathan, and then working on the Spirit Box thing. So I think throughout the remainder of the year, we'll also try to do some more visual, video stuff relating to the music from the EP as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I've learned quickly is that you get way more engagement with, if you have video content, just because it's how people consume things. And I know that we both work in marketing, so get it, I know it, but it's you see it firsthand when you put something out that has a video component attached to it, the numbers it gets versus you just put a song out, and it just kind of it's not the same thing. So definitely going to need to do more video content.
Darin, I wanted to ask you, before the Taproot show, there was some promotional videos you made. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure thing. So essentially, going into this, it was around the time that we shot the, going even farther back, I'd say around Halloween. This is where it all started. I was like, I need a costume. I was like, I've been all these other things, and I was like, I like to go with something simple that doesn't require a lot of work. So I was like, maybe I'll go as Fred Durst this year. So I was like, it's a simple. I was like, I just shaved my beard into that goatee. I was like, I bought a hat from Lids. And prior to that, on my comedy show, I did do the one that really sparked the Fred Durst phenomenon on my comedy show was I did this thing where I have a hat sitting as if I'm at the mall looking at hats, and it was the New York Yankees hat, and I would touch it, and every time I would touch it, it would go, yeah, come and get some. And that one, I posted it last year around Thanksgiving, and it literally just went viral. It took off. It was getting people from South America, from people from Russia. It was all over the place. Once it got past the threshold of USA, it was worldwide phenomenon. People were resharing it, and every day I would log in Instagram on the Magic Trade Day thing. So from there, I said, why don't I do a couple more? And then, so I first started out, I said, I'm going to do that voicemail thing because we would always, joke about the Taproot voicemail. So that was the whole sketch was I just said, well, nobody knows who Taproot is at this point. So I said, I'll say the guy. Oh, that was the cat. The cat just raised the desk.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, there we go.
One moment, please.
We got some technical there. So that was the thing, is the whole sketch revolved around that Fred Durst voicemail. I said, I'm going to call the guy from Taproot and, leave this nonsense message. It was like,
well, this was before we knew Taproot was like coming back, right?
Yeah, right.
So we started.
Yeah, this was just like when
we're like, they're not active. Yeah, we can prank them. We can mess with them.
That's right. Right. So we would watch Steven Richards' Instagram live videos and him talking about this new music and all that stuff. And yeah, so it was like that. I started there, and from there I kept like going with it. I did Limp Christmas or whatever. That was the other thing, instead of Limp Bizkit. Yeah. So and I was just like basically taking dumb lyrics that Fred Durst says in all of his songs, and like that's his whole thing, is he'd just be like, yeah, baby, all this stupid stuff that he would say, and I'm just like this blabbering idiot that basically people have associated Fred Durst with. So I just kept rolling with that, and then all of a sudden I started like seeing like Scissors liked your page, and then Scissors, he would send me a message and he would go, man, he's like, this is the funniest stuff I've ever seen. Then on Father's Day, I released a Dad Vibes Taproot thing, and I was like rapping about like Fred Durst being a dad and Steven Richards being a dad and how their music has changed, but they're still dads. And, it's just like this nonsense thing. So, he's like, man, he's like, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And, so I just kept going with this gag of, every month I go into the studio, this cable access studio in Pittsburgh, and I do different things. Like I'll grow a beard just to like shave it into a mustache, and in this case, I shave it into the Fred Durst thing, and just have been doing that. And then just from there, I just do these random sketches. So those promos that were like built up to the Taproot show, we recorded those like weeks ahead of time, and we knew like, all right, we're going to do this stuff for our show to try to like generate interest. But it was all about like just coming up with the most random nonsense, absurd stuff that you can. And then it all came full circle when we got that opportunity to open up for the band. And really the only way that they kind of made the connection was my friend Alfonso, who plays in the band Heartsick. And we actually, Identity X played with them way back in the day. They were called No Life, and we've kept a relationship with him. But they were on that Taproot Tuesday, and they started talking about these videos. And then Alfonso was like, I know that guy. That's Darin. He's in this band and blah, blah, blah. And then like you start to see like the eyes of like the other guys, like Philly TR, he's like, it sounds familiar.
Like Identity X.
Yeah, I've heard that band. Yeah,
with them.
Because Identity X opened for Taproot like 4 times prior to Guides opening up for them. So we kind of knew them like just from playing, but we didn't really stay in contact.
Yeah, there was no like personal relationship. Right. It was just kind of like familiar with each other.
Right. And then the manager, Tom, he reached out to me and he said like, hey man, like whatever you're doing, like we're in on this joke. He's like, just keep going, keep going with it. Like we love it. So that's it, just kind of like set it off. I was like, all right, no rules, no nothing. We're just going to go. So a lot of those videos just came out of that. And then at the show, I said,
well, it was interesting too, because, when they brought you on to Taproot Tuesday that time with Alfonso, it was like, they still didn't realize that we were playing that show with them. So like, that's when Darin was on there, it connected the dots. Like, because I think they said like, well, we need to get you out to a show to like do your Fred Durst thing on stage. And we're like, well, my band's playing with you in Pittsburgh. Like it's already happening. Like all of this is lined up. Let's just go.
Right. Yeah. He didn't realize that I played in the band that was opening for them. That was like the thing. Like I was like, oh yeah, I actually play guitar. So ultimately would have
well, that's where the stuck thing came up too, because
he said he would come up on stage.
You mentioned, well, we cover a Taproot song, and they're like, play it. We're like, no, we're not going to play it. Yeah, you should play it. And they told this story about how they opened for the Deftones. They would cover the Deftones but we said, we'll cover Limp Bizkit. And then Steven Richards was like, well, if you learn Stuck, I'll come up on stage and do it with you guys.
Because even prior to that, we were thinking about, like we said, we should do a Limp Bizkit song, but it was just so like ironic that they had that Taproot Tuesday on a day that I just got done filming sketches, dressed as Fred Durst. So I had the goatee and the hat and the shirt already on. And my friend says, "You got to get on this show now." So that's when they brought me on, and then from there, I was releasing all those other videos, and then I got a message from Tom, and he goes, "What's your cell phone number?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm like, do they want something or whatever?" And then I got a call at like 11:30 p.m. on it was like, what was it?
It was the Wednesday of the show.
The Wednesday before the show, and it's like, "Hey, Darin, this is Steven Richards," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like, I'm talking to Steven Richards on the phone here, like
you're like bedroom.
Yeah, right. I'm in my bedroom, like talking to Steven Richards, and the funny thing about this conversation was, he goes, "Hey, man, I'm honored to talk to you. Like, you're the guy that makes these hilarious videos," and I'm thinking, the guy that loves my stuff and saying he's honored to talk to me, this is the guy that got me into playing heavy music when I started my band. Like, Emotional Times was such a influence. Like, oh man, like learning odd timings and all this stuff. And then the guy's telling me like how I'm like this, honored.
You're a celebrity to him.
I'm a celebrity to him. Yeah. So, he was like, now it's like Steven Richards. I have his, cell phone number. If you like call him up, "Hey, Steven, what's happening?" Not that I do that, but the whole thing was, he said, when he called me, he says, "Hey, man, like we want to, we want to have you and come out on stage and sing this bridge to this new song." And I'm like, "Oh, geez, like what is it?" He's like, "The guy from Nonpoint sings the bridge to this song called Favorite Song. It's coming out, I think, on September 1st." And, I said, "Hey man, like I'm not really a singer, like I'm the guitar player, but my, the singer Jonathan will do that part."
I'll do it.
So I don't know. I think the whole thing is that the whole joke, like I filmed that segment at the Crafthouse with Steven Richards. I said, I want to do these sketches while you're there in person and make it like all come full circle. But then I think it was the prank aspect of him coming up on stage and like singing Stuck and like pranking us, and then we would come back later and prank them,
on their song,
messing up their song. So I said I could have, the thing in my case, like I could have gone up on stage and I could have did a bunch of like, yeah, and like did the Fred Durst thing. I was like, I just don't want to mess up the show for the people that were there, and like so
this is their live. They were debuting. That was the first time they played that song live. It was the live debut of that.
So
track.
I mean, if they bring me out the Blue Ridge Rock Fest when Fred Durst is actually in the house, then that would be a really good. That would be the time that I could really just go full Fred Durst there. But and I might get beat up by the real Fred Durst, but hey, whatever. It's all worth it. That's the whole thing. But yeah, so that's what I mean. It's like I just I rolled with it, and I think after that video went viral back in November, Jonathan said, you're now you got to do more Fred Durst stuff for the.
You're now Fred Durst.
I'm now Fred Durst. It's like
Fraud Durst.
Yeah, some girl, she said, "Oh man, we have Pittsburgh Gene Simmons, and we have the Pittsburgh Joke, like the guy that dresses up as a Joker and rides around on a motorcycle." He's like, "Now you're the Pittsburgh Fred Durst," So, and it's funny because the other day I'm on one of these dating sites, and this girl says, "Oh shit, it's Fred Durst," and I'm like, "Oh man, like I guess I'm that well known now to the people out there." Is like, but yeah, so that's for me, and I have a couple more that I did. Like I did a bunch of these sketches, and I haven't edited them yet. I'm working on them, but the Taproot ones in particular are. He's going to call Jared Montague, which I call him Jared Montag, as, basically like, like I said, Fred Durst character is like, he's just, yeah, he just says a bunch of nonsense. And I call up the old guitarist from Taproot. I leave a voicemail on his, the new guitarist, Taylor Roberts. I tell Taylor Roberts to come over and paint my house because he's a painter by day. Philly TR, I make fun of his book bag guitar strap. And yeah, it's just like he calls up Ben Stiller, he calls up Owen Wilson, he calls up Corey Taylor, like anyone that I could think of, like that just has no like. Oh, and I did one where he calls up Buckethead, So I'm like, I kind of think, I think my next batch, I'm going in on Tuesday to record more, but it's like, I think I want to do something where Fred Durst calls Fred Durst or whatever, like he calls himself and leaves himself as a voicemail. But Fred Durst does supposedly look at this stuff, but he hasn't reacted. So maybe he's just like angry, you know, that he's seeing this or whatever. He might just be sitting back and saying, how far is this guy going to go before, like, you know,
before it's time to shut him down.
Yeah,
before I have to leave him a
yeah,
voicemail.
So he said it's only a matter of time before I get a voicemail and Steven Richards gets a new voicemail. So I think that would be the ultimate, like, everything comes full circle, you know.
I don't think he can comment on it, because if he comments on it, it's going to get bigger.
That's right, exactly.
Right.
I think that's the thing.
Good.
It would really have to strike a chord with him for him to repost. There's been some other people that have done like these Fred Durst videos, and
Yeah, he'll repost.
He'll repost those, but I think since I've consistently been doing it since November, I said I'll just keep slamming these Fred Durst things, and you know, whatever. I mean, hey, who cares, you know? But at some point, someone will repost it, you know, and it will get back to them.
The next step is you're going to end up on stage with Fred Durst.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Going toe to toe.
But I do have, like I said, I even bought the Dad Vibes costume, so I could do the Fred Durst of the Nookie era, which is that's the outfit that I have there that I wore at the Taproot show. But then I also have the Dad Vibes costume, which he only wore for one show, but it's just, you know, that's like an iconic, like the Lollapalooza of 2022. I think that's when they did that. But he had that. They actually had it on Reddit, like buy this on Amazon and you can have that costume. So gray wig, brown windbreaker, peach shirt, and then, like, you know, then I have the khaki pants, you know. So but that's it. As Steven Richards would say, pranks for days, man. Yeah. That's what we're doing. It's like Eric Andres when he pranks celebrities. It's like, I guess that's what I'm doing with. I also have done like an impression of, I've done this Danzig. I'm like, I say, I'm Pittsburgh Danzig, and he's just like, you know, I've heard he's a crossing guard, and he says, you can tell your children to walk my way. But Danzig obviously is not as relevant as Fred Durst, so it's just
Fred Durst was one of the biggest celebrities in the world for about 4 years.
Right. So more people know about Fred Durst. What's another celebrity that I parody? I'm trying to think. Well, Danzig, Fred Durst, and we did the Jay Gordon. I had him dress up like he was the singer of Orgy, and I said it's the Jay Gordon alarm clock.
The problem is I'm terrible in these improv situations. Everything I do is very like well rehearsed, and he puts me on the green screen and says, "Here, just make stuff up," and it's not work. My game.
That's the thing. Like, as being an editor, you know, I could just make things that are not good, and that's the beauty of these sketches, is that it is all improv. They'll come in and just rattle off a bunch of nonsense, and then be like, "Okay, that take was good. That take wasn't good." And that's how it all comes together. So that's the story of how Fred Durst came to be.
Just getting started.
How can we get a hold of you? Facebook, Instagram?
We're on Instagram. The handle is Guides Official. I believe it's the same for Facebook. TikTok. But to be honest, we're much more active on Instagram. You can find us on TikTok, but there's not much going on there right now. And then our website is guidesmusic.com. And that's kind of the main hub, and you can get everywhere from there as well.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thanks for coming on the show today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'll just add, also, you can, obviously, the songs that we have out right now, you can find on Spotify. So definitely follow us on there, because that's where the magic's going to happen.
Was there something left in